Welcome to The Space Between. On this episode, I'm joined by Ana Mirabal. Ana is a mystic whose gifts brought her to the world of tarot. She is an artist, singer, educator, and the founder of Tarot by Ana. Together, we discuss all things mystical, what it's like to connect to the other realms, how to discover your mystical gifts, and how one's agency has never been more important in the space between. Join us as we connect through conversation. Welcome to The Space Between. I'm Alyson and I'm so glad you have joined us for another episode of the Space Between podcast. And today I have with me a very esteemed guest that I recently met, Ana Mirabal. Ana, welcome to The Space Between.
Hi, thank you guys for having me. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy that we met, and we'll talk about all of that, and that you agreed to come in. Yeah. It's not easy to speak out into the ether, especially when we're recording like this. So
yeah, definitely.
Thank you for doing it.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. And today we're going to talk about, our actual theme is mystic, but we're going to talk about mystical, mysticism, and we're going to get into all the things. And for those that haven't watched an episode of the podcast or not sure what is this, right? People are always asking me, what the hell is this space between, right? It really is this interesting transitional time that we find ourselves in. We're in very interesting energy. As we sit here, there is an eclipse.
Yes.
One that is like rocking the shit out of everyone eclipse. And everything. Yeah. And the times sort of in ways continue to get like a little more wild as we march on through these last couple years.
Yeah, no, definitely. They do.
It's been a lot. And I just kept thinking, I felt very disconnected from myself. Yeah. And I think a lot of people in my life and people in my circle that I was talking to, they felt disconnected from themselves. And when you're not connected to yourself, you can't connect to anyone else. It's very difficult. Yeah. So then here we have just a bunch of humans that are disconnected from themselves and each other. And when I started thinking about putting this work into the world, I wanted it to be about connection. Yeah. Right. And a lot of people say like, oh, you do these amazing interviews. And yes, it is an interview in a way, but it's really a conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted to highlight the things in our lives that are important, or in this case, maybe things that people are confused about or don't really quite understand. Right. What you do, and we'll talk about it, is really on like the precipice of what I would consider the next thing, right? In spirituality.
Yeah, we hope so. Right?
Absolutely. And I think we see it shifting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are interested in the mystical and things like that. So Ana, we met at an event, and I'm going to shout out one of my earliest podcast supporters, Corinne Vinette. She has an amazing product called The Best Friend. Mm-hmm. It's really cool. We'll link it below. And it's a way that you can zip your dress without needing someone else to do it for you.
Super useful.
Which is super useful.
That's a great product.
So badass. Yeah, and Corinne's badass of you. And that's how we met. She had an event, and I saw you sitting there, and you had this like beautiful setup, and you were reading tarot.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yeah, I was.
And that's how we met. And I admittedly had not had a ton of experience with it. I had my cards read maybe a few times, and I consider spirituality my jam, right? So it was kind of odd that I didn't have more experience in tarot. And I didn't really know what to expect, but I popped down and I thought like, okay. And I was in an interesting moment, as I think a lot of us are.
That's when tarot is the thing.
You blew me away.
I'm so glad.
I was like, holy shit, like, wow, it rang so true what you said. Aww. So why don't you tell us who you are and what it is that you do?
My name's Ana Mirabal. I am a professional tarot reader. Been a professional tarot reader for like 3 years now. I've been like an unprofessional tarot reader for like 7 years.
I love how you're like unprofessional and professional. It's all the same path, but I totally get where you're coming from.
An unofficial tarot reader for about 7 years. I started doing it in college. I was at a store called Jill Lindsay in Fort Greene for like 2 years, and I had a booth there. It was like a table, but it was like a little booth. It had a sign, And this
is common in New York. People should know this, right? right? Like you'll go places and they'll have tarot. I remember there was a bar downtown called Employees Only where I had my palm read for the first time like 15 years ago.
No, it's becoming popular. I think you can do it. There are a couple bars in like the East Village where you can do it. At the event we were at, it was at an Alice and Olivia. So that was cool. Great. Yeah, so that was cool. So yeah, I'll pop up at like stores or like baby showers. And I also teach tarot. So that's
Okay. And your business is called?
It's called Tarot with Ana. Oh, yeah. It's called Tarot with Ana.
Tarot with Ana.
And you can find me at tarotwithana.com.
Beautiful. Yeah. And we'll link it all below. I also love your Instagram. I've been following you since we met.
Yeah, it's like, not like it's a new thing, but I think me doing so much tarot social media has been, I think like it's a part of business, and I had like not like grapples with it. I was never like the type of person who was so like anti-social media. I think it's like really like beautiful that we can connect with each other, and then obviously like it has its like setbacks, but I feel like because it's one of those things that feels a little bit it feels like it's like a lot to put yourself out there like consistently in that way. Girl, so my social media is new, and like
we were just talking about that before we hit the record button.
Yeah,
it's a wild world on social media.
It is. It super is.
But you're spreading your message, and you're spreading your light. Yeah, and you're spreading your service and your work.
Yeah, so I'm doing beautiful. Like a couple things with that. I think I'm doing like kind of traditionally tarot social media will be like, here's your reading, and you can either like go by your star sign, or you can pick like I've been doing little like items around my house, so it's like if you like this little like sculpture of this cat, like this is your reading.
I've seen that, or people use different numbers,
that sort of thing. And then I also have been doing like kind of informative content, because I think my favorite thing that I do with tarot is teach it. So
okay, so you're a teacher at heart. I love that.
Yeah, a little bit.
And there's going to be a whole new crop as we continue to move into the age of Aquarius.
Yes.
Of people that are wanting, to learn and to be part of that world.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So we're going to talk about mystic and mysticism, and then I really want to get back to talking about tarot and kind of what is it, because I think a lot of people are confused, and we'll talk about some of the narratives. So mystic as a word, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is having spiritual powers or qualities that are difficult to understand or to explain. How do you think about that? I love that you laughed.
Can you read it one more time?
It's having spiritual powers or qualities that are difficult to understand or to explain. It is funny.
No, it's funny because it's like that could be like, not like that could be anything, but a little bit. Yeah.
No, I totally get it. So because it was the Oxford Dictionary, I do this, there's kind of like a cheeky reason. Yeah. Because it's old school.
Yeah.
The Oxford Dictionary is like one of the first dictionaries that was ever written, right? So it's funny how far like themes and definitions of things have come. So maybe this will resonate more. So I had two more. And this came from a different dictionary. So seeker of profound spiritual truths and experiences beyond conventional religious or philosophical doctrines. That's like a very educational 101.
Yeah, no,
definition.
Totally. That
it feels very like academia.
Yeah, that is very like this is what a mystic historically is.
And this is the one, and I love your response here. Mysticism is the search for direct personal encounter with the divine.
I think that's true. Yeah. I would say that's about right.
I would say that's true as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I say divine, I think it means something different to everyone, which is what's so beautiful about spirituality in this new world where we're so much more some of us are so much more open to how other people resonate with the things
we're opening.
We're
opening. We're awakening.
It feels like we're not, but we are.
Slowly but surely, I think.
Slowly but surely. So what does divine mean to you? Like when I say the word divine?
Yeah. So a couple things. I think like divine, there's divine in like the higher power and that sort of thing. And it's so, that's so specific to like an individual. Yes. I think that like there is like practitioners of like magic or like witchy things that it's traditional, right? It's like it's God or like that sort of thing. And then there are people who it's like different spirit guides, animal spirits. Like I think that So there's like, but there's like ancestors is a big one. So there's like a personal connection to something that is kind of beyond you. And then I think like to divine is like, not me doing like the dictionary too. I think to divine or like is predictive stuff, right? So there's also kind of tying into the telling the future and that sort of thing. So yeah, either way, it feels like what's beyond you, like what can't I see right now?
I love that.
Yeah.
And what we can't see, touch, hear.
Yeah.
Well, you know, clairaudience.
Usually.
Right. Actually, in the third dimensional construct,
exactly.
Right? It's like all the things that don't go into
you can't see unless you're like at a haunted house.
Right.
Then,
the
like
very human version of it.
You're not averagely gonna just see it.
No,
you know?
absolutely. And here's what I'll say too, and this is like, I don't want to say it's a disclaimer, but it's important for people to know, and I'm sure you will agree with this.
Yeah.
Everyone has the capability to see beyond.
Oh, totally.
And I think a lot of people have told general population, I'm the one that can do it.
Yeah.
It's me, right? And there's this kind of godly, very like Capricorn, old school way versus like the Aquarian age and the Piscean age where it's like, okay, everyone has
everyone
access.
can do it. I think it's very like, I don't know, it's borderline like capitalistic, right? I think like to put it on.
Totally.
Yeah, I think to kind of have it be that separate thing where it's like special individuals. And I also think it's like there's a way that if you're like a medium who's on like some sort of like television show, and like no, that isn't like a shade to them. I think that I don't disbelieve them or anything, but I think that there is like some people are better like at performing it, and I think it's genuinely because like they're people who like physically see more. And I think when you're learning like psychic skills, it's like if you think to engage your like other senses, if you're hearing or that sort of thing, then you'd be surprised at like how much. I feel like with tarot, I hear more than I see with my eyes usually. So
and everyone has those different. So you're more clairaudient. So
exactly.
I don't read cards, but I can connect through. But again, someone told me that all those senses are there for us.
Yeah, totally.
And it's just the practice and the exercise that we put in. It's just like going to the gym,
and then
right?
anyone
to, like,
can learn any of them. You know, like I feel like since I've been doing it more, like I do see more. But like typically, like I didn't know that.
Yeah, I love that we have that in common.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So one of the things that I loved, I pulled from your website, and I absolutely love your tagline. So our tagline here is connection through conversation. Mm-hmm. And your tagline is the conduit to the otherworldly.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
That is what it is.
Those words all together, they're like beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. I'm going to be so real. It was a little ChatGPT. But
I love how honest you're being.
But I think
we all need a little help.
No, but and I think it was like a long series of like what actually I feel like describes me as a personality, and I did it with a friend who is a beautiful like energy worker. Her name is Hannah Hazel. She's super awesome. And so we were kind of talking about what we think like describes not just me as a reader, but me as like a person who you're going to be sitting and probably telling intimate things to, you know, like and I think that I do get from a lot of people who are close to me that I am like just a person with like one foot on the ground and kind of like one foot in the sky. And I think that's kind of why I giggled at the initial definition of mystic too, because I was like that more. I feel like that just describes like my personality. I feel like more than like what I like.
Girl, you're in your purpose. Then.
Yeah, exactly.
Your purpose, which we talk a lot about on the podcast.
Yeah.
By the way, I love that for you.
Yeah,
I love that for you. I'm also jealous that at your age you figured out like hell yeah, that's just amazing. Good for you.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
So when we talk about the otherworldly, the other side, the beyond, right? It's a lot of what we're talking about with mysticism. What does that really mean to you?
Yeah. So I think everyone has, and it's kind of like what I was talking about with like the divine. I think like everyone has like such a personal relationship with like what, not even just like what is coming through for them, like what spirit guides, what ancestors, like whatever, if it's just the universe, if it's like the vibe, whatever it is. I think everyone has like a different relationship to that. And then everyone has a different relationship to like how they receive that message too. And I think that's kind of what I was saying about, it's like, yeah, there are people who are on TV who are very like clear, like, I'm getting an energy, you know? And then I think that there are a lot of ways where it's like, if you're really paying attention, like, that there are a lot of more subtle ways that you might be getting like messages that you're not like noticing. So I think tarot is the thing that resonated with me because I'm really nerdy. So I love characters and I love storytelling, and I'm an actor, I'm a writer, and so I feel like the characters and the cards and the situations, like that's like what makes sense to my brain. And I feel like if I'm very and I'm also neurodivergent, so it's like if I'm very like passionate about like a TV show or a movie, or like now I'm very into video games, like it's not only like that's my passion, but I do genuinely feel like there are things that like will be in the writing that I'll be like, oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear. So I think like when I do tarot, like I'm kind of translating that. And I think a lot of like my students and my clients will kind of like they'll kind of like make fun of me, but in a loving way, in that like I'm always very referential. I'm like, did you see that time on like this show where this happened? Like that's what's happening, you know?
Right, you're able to pull it together.
Yeah, exactly.
Because a lot of times I think when we're talking about the otherworldly, it gets a little like esoteric.
Yeah, totally.
And it's hard to bring it in for people that don't live within. And I love how you say have one foot in. I'm going to say one foot in, one foot in. It's not one foot out,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
It's in and in, which is amazing.
Yeah,
it's like you're able to really, you know, manage both and kind of oscillate between the two. But that's really important. I mean, I love that you shared how personal it is for you.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And I think that's really amazing. It just even in my heart and in my mind, I'm like, wow, you know, this is, you're walking your path. So why don't you tell us like, what is tarot, right? I think everyone knows what tarot cards are, but why don't you tell us what it is?
No, totally. So tarot is a set of 78 cards, and all the cards have a specific meaning. The first 22 of them are major arcana, and so that's like a big life moment. And I like to say it's kind of like it's the same person going on a journey. So it's like it goes kind of from the Fool, which is a card where it's like you were just born, to the World, which is kind of a card that has like a reincarnation almost connotation to it, you know? And then there are the minor arcana, and that's the other, I'm bad at math, but it's the other one. It's the other like 50 or so.
We don't need to do math on the space
exactly.
between. It's not
it's
required.
like 50 something. So those are more specific to individual areas of life. So wands will be creativity, cups will be emotions, swords will be like your brain and will be like conflict, and pentacles will be like earth things, so money and your job and that sort of thing.
That's amazing. And that's, by the way, the best definition and explanation of tarot that I've ever heard.
I'm glad. Yeah, I try to make it clear.
Well, you have one foot in and one foot in.
Yeah, well, I also think it's like one of the why I started learning it, and why I started learning astrology and like whatever, like anything that I've learned about spirituality, it's because I love it, but it's like a lot of, there can be like fear mongering, or you can like get a message on somebody doing it on Instagram and you don't understand, right?
Yes.
What it, and so then you're like I'm so anxious, so I'll be like thinking about it for like the rest of my life, like why'd I get that Tower card, you know, like what did that mean?
That's one of the narratives, because we talk about the narratives on here. I'm so glad you brought that up, because with everything on this planet, with the dualities that exist, there's a shadow and a light, right? And there is a shadow side to tarot.
Totally.
And one of the things I would say, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, is be careful who you trust your energy with.
Yeah.
Be discerning.
Absolute. Oh, 100%.
It's so important.
Yeah. And I also think that it's like, I'm not always like, even with people that I love and do trust with like my tarot, I'm always like very like, I think, intentional about like when I get a reading, even with the people who I feel like resonate with me like the most and like my close friends, because I think it's like you have to be open to hearing kind of whatever. You also, I think like for tarot, I think like there's like a level of like bedside manner that's like important almost, you know, and in the way that like even like a very kind doctor is always gonna have to like, if they're gonna deliver bad news, like that's kind of what's gonna happen. Like you just have to be kind of like ready for like, and also you're knowing that like not every doctor is very kind, you know? And so like if you're opening yourself up to like that energy, and then also there's like a layer to it where it's like even people who are very kind, they're speaking from like spirit, you know, they're not necessarily speaking from themselves.
Right.
So there's a level of like you kind of have to be able to hear whatever, and if you're not in the headspace for it, then like then kind of be mindful of that, you know?
Of course. And there's personal bias that you have to check at the door.
Yeah, exactly.
I have one of my best friends is Daryl Gaines. He's been on the podcast a couple times. He's an amazing astrologer. He's been doing it for 30 years. And him and I talk about this, how any kind of energy work or any kind of work that you're doing with the otherworldly, I'm going to use your ChatGPT word, you have to be really intentional and grounded and centered and out of your own thing to be able to really serve and receive what's coming through you. Because isn't that ultimately what you're connecting to? Talk to us about that, right?
Yeah.
So I sat down on that couch a few weeks ago when we met to do the reading. You know, who do you connect with? What does that look like from the 1 foot in to the 1 foot in?
So I think it's honestly, to me, it's kind of different every time. And it very much depends on the person that I'm reading for. Some people have very strong spirit guides. And so, And so I'll feel, oh my God. And I think I said this when we read too, that I have a little like spot on my shoulder where I like feel like a tap if somebody has like really strong spirit guides. And so for me, that's always kind of easier because I feel like I can like relax a little bit and I'm like, okay, you guys can take over and I'll just kind of like say like what I think you're saying. There are people where it's like, especially a lot of times if I do parties and it's like a fun thing and it's not necessarily people who are like constantly like sitting down, like meditating, being like, hello guides. And there's like a little bit more of a disconnect. Like sometimes those people do still have very strong guides. But sometimes it's like that I feel like is more like me, earth human, like trying to interpreting a little bit more. And so I think that's where like kind of like the knowledge of like the story that it's telling together, helps me. And then I think also if people have like recently passed loved ones, then it's usually very
interesting.
Yeah, then that's usually kind of I feel like who wants to talk.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So of course I'm coming into this conversation with my own like things, right? Yeah. So I'm a Reiki practitioner. I don't do it like for a job or anything, but I do it for friends and family. Yeah. And when I first started Reiki, because that is all energy that comes through, you're a conduit, right? It's very different, but also very similar. I was really nervous at first because I was like, I don't really know how to do this. But now that I've tapped more into myself, I can hear like exactly where my hands are supposed to go or exactly where. And is that say in the case that the spirit guides aren't super present or whatever, does it just become this sort of intuitive, like you're just pulling and you know exactly, because it is when you get your tarot read, it is a story that you're telling.
Yeah. Right? No, absolutely. I think that, and then because I think there's a level of it that's like my kind of spiritual team too, that I feel like I can sometimes sit back and be like, you guys take this one, like, you know,
they're just all chatting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And I think that, for me, that does kind of look like I said, sometimes I feel like I hear a little bit more, and then like there is like also kind of like a clear cognizance where it's just kind of like, this is kind of just what I thought to say at the moment. That's usually if I get something like very specific, it's usually like, I don't know why I need to tell you this, but like be mindful of like pickpocketers or like that sort of thing, you know? But yeah.
Claircognizance is really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. And to be honest with you, I don't know that I knew that was the name of it.
I think that
no,
that's what
it does.
It is.
But thank you.
Yeah.
This is why we're having a conversation. There was a couple years ago, so we're shooting this in New York City, and I feel like not everybody knows that. It's an interesting, it's an interesting time to be here.
It's an interesting time in New York City.
And it was a couple years ago, and I was really deep into a spiritual program that I was going through, really doing like a lot of shadow work, and I was girl, I was in it, right? I was like going through it. And I remember standing next to this woman on the subway, and all of a sudden I just had this, it was almost like I wasn't speaking, just something, I was like, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but blah, blah, blah. To this day, I can't remember exactly what I said. Yeah. And she was like, oh my God, and just like broke down crying. Yeah. And she's like, you have no idea how, and I said, I don't even know what the hell just happened. She's looking at me like, but obviously it was a message that she needed to hear.
Yeah, totally.
How beautiful is that when it happens?
No, it's amazing.
Such a gift. Yeah. And what a gift that you receive it.
Yeah. No, I feel like that's always like, to me, I feel like, because a lot of it, especially because it like has become my job. So it's like a lot of it, like, I think like to like sometimes lose it. Like, I feel like I lose the like, oh, wow, this is like a whole like spiritual thing that we're doing
Right.
sometimes. And I think that those are the moments where I'm like, oh, this is like a thing. This is like a real thing, you know? Like, when I get like a
that
very
with
specific
anything.
thing, like, I'm like, oh, I guess this is for real. Like,
It brings you back
yeah.
to being like, wait, what's happening? Oh, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can. I mean, especially if this is the world that you live in all the time.
Yeah.
I do this as part of what I do. And I also like have a mortgage business, which is like hardly anything.
Totally.
We don't talk about this. So it's probably interesting, right? That you have so much time spent in, you know, your craft and your service and sort of, you know, well, I love this 1 foot in, 1 foot in. I don't know why I keep saying it because it isn't 1 foot out. You're in these both worlds and it's beautiful.
I think I'm bringing people to the other world that I have the foot in, you know? Like, I'm like, come with me for like 30 minutes or something. Yeah.
1,000%. And it's funny because that's the conduit, that's the healer, that's the teacher.
Yeah.
That's, you know, and I'm not saying that everyone has to believe in this stuff, right? It's what we believe in. And if somebody doesn't believe in this, that's fine too. I mean, there's no judgment, right? Yeah. But again, when we think about this time in the space between, it is people, it's almost like tuning into a radio frequency. Yeah. If that makes sense, right? It's like everyone has access and there's all these stations. Yeah. And you're just kind of like playing with the knob. Totally. And maybe having a reading here or reading a book or listening to this podcast or whatever it might be. And you're tuning. Yeah. And then everyone's station's just like a little bit different, right? Because everyone's path is different. Totally. And I have to say, for folks that do what you do and for you, it's such a beautiful act of serving.
Oh, thank you.
Because it's been known, and this is a narrative, and I would love to talk about this. It's been known to have a negative connotation. Yeah. Mysticism, you know, witchcraft, right? Totally. These are words that kind of all went together. I mean, people died for this. Yeah. Many, many years ago. They were burned and that's a real story. That's not like bullshit, right? People think that's like a fake. I'm like, no, that's right. That's for real. That actually happened, right? Let's not pretend. So what would you say about, you know, I think it's become more positive, but there's always going to be people that think it's evil or think it's, you know, how would you respond to that?
I will say, like, witch is a word that I totally claim. And I think, like, I think that because for me, when I was growing up, it was like, it was like Harry Potter era, so it was more like of a fun thing, you know, right? It was like Sabrina, like, you know. So I think when I was little, I was like, I want to be a witch, you know, and so I think that now that it's like part of my practice. But I did have a student who's also a really beautiful reader. Their name is Leaf Field, and they shared with me that like me claiming, like, always being like, oh, I'm a witch, haha, you know, like, and it being absolutely nothing to me, like, was a thing that was actually really, like, empowering for them, like, in claiming that as, like, their identity, you know, or, like, part of their identity, right? And so I think, like, I think that it's, like, for me, like, a lot of like those buzzwords, like the witchcraft and all that doesn't faze me necessarily, because I think I was like from a young age, like that was a thing that I was like wanted to be part of.
That's so interesting.
But I do, I have my family's not like super religious, but they are. Well, I mean, my immediate family, but I think like my mom is like a very like regular at church, and she, you know, sometimes she tells people about readings and they're like, cool, or like what I do, and they're like, cool, and sometimes she gets like, oh, I'll pray for her, you know, and I think like and so I think like for that I think it's like I feel like, you know, the powers of the like unknown can be good or bad in any capacity, and we know that they can be bad in a Christian church, right? Like, as much as I think that there's a lot of good that can be done there as well, like that's not been used in society well.
So many thoughts about this.
Yeah.
By the way, religion's a whole other episode that I am just straight up not ready to tackle. Yeah,
no, totally, because it's big, and I'm trying to be like very particular of my words, because I do have a lot of respect for like my mom's relationship to her Christianity. And that sort of thing. And I don't feel like totally disconnected from that, but I do think that it's like, yeah, I think it is funny to to kind of look at one spiritual practice, especially a spiritual practice that can be like traced a lot more back to like indigenous people and like Black people. And I think like to look at it as like an evil thing, when I think it's like, if you look at your own kind of spiritual organization, sometimes, you know, it's not.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. My next bullet point. See, I told you, these conversations just always go exactly where they're
same page.
It's beautiful. Christianity has denounced it for centuries. They
sure have.
Yeah. And I think in the world that we're living in today, and this is so important.
Yeah.
We're not sitting here saying that someone shouldn't be Christian.
Mm-mm.
We're not. Because if you are a student of the other world and spirituality, you have to accept everyone.
Yeah.
So don't tell us that we can't. And it's okay if somebody wants to say, I want to pray for you. That's nice.
Yeah.
It could be coming from a dark place. It could be coming from a light place. It doesn't even really matter because it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about their own bias that comes into them thinking about.
It was very much
something
like,
about
I'm
them.
praying for you because I think you're like doing something like evil,
or
like
you're not going to go to heaven.
Come through. Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. And I was raised in church, and again, TBD on this episode because it's going to be a big one. And I had a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Coming out of we were Presbyterian for a while, and then when I was probably and that was actually the tame part, because then when I was about 9 or 10, we ended up going to a Southern Baptist church in the north.
Gotcha.
Which was really interesting because it's like, it was very strange, the pastor and like the people that they brought. And again, for another episode. But I do think it's interesting, and regardless of what people think, there's a grip on what people have used, and this is no disrespect to people that are religious, for control. Yeah. And for power. And for money, right? I mean, again, that's not everyone that belongs to a church or that is part of the faith, but it's a lot of people. Yeah. And that's just the truth, right? And we tell the truth. But it's just interesting how that, you see that is breaking down. Totally. A lot of people are not like looking to the church. Yeah. For answers or for, support or for approval or disapproval or whatever it may be. And people are actually, kind of pulling away from that. And people still need something to believe in. Right? Yeah. I listen, I have friends that are atheists, and I try not to judge that. I just feel sad because I'm like, God, if you think this is it, then that makes me sad. But that's also fine, right? Like, what does that say about me and my bias that's coming into it? So I do think that, and I appreciate everything that you said, because it wasn't an easy question to answer. But but you did great. I mean, it was.
I'd be talking.
You talked it right out. It was perfect. But that's the thing. It's like, we are breaking down this patriarchal, like you mentioned with Indigenous and Black people, and how, is that another reason why these things have been denounced? Is that another reason why these things?
I think so much so, right? I think and I think another layer to it is that so for example, a form of like magical practice or spiritual practice that is popular in like the Caribbean is Santeria, right? And so Santeria, Christian saints are part of Santeria, like Catholic saints are part of Santeria. So it's not, I think, so separate as
it's not disjointed.
Would, as some people
and it
would
seems
believe.
like here, especially in America and probably in Europe, right, where this is more the Western. Not that the Caribbean's not part of it, right? It's a little different, but there is that
stateside
divide separation, and the more that we can push on that button, the better. Then the more fear equals more control, gives those people the power, and the cycle repeats and repeats. Yeah. That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, I think it's like
they bring it all in together. It doesn't have to be verses.
Because I think again, not to be on like a soapbox about it, but I think it's like colonized people, like there was their traditional religions, right? And then there were like religions that were brought from Europe, and now I think like a lot of people of color in the States, right, they have like kind of a combination of those things, right? They have like the thing, whatever survived, right? And then they have like Christian practices,
whatever
that are still,
was impressed upon them.
but they're still like really meaningful to them, and are still things that like resonated. or like at least resonate now. And so like, who's to say like at the moment, but like now, you know, it's as much a valid part of it in their practice and their identity as anything. So I think it's like I personally, like, I feel like I have a very strong like kinship with Mary Magdalene, and I would not think of myself as a Christian.
Shout out to my mother.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you some stuff. Are you digging Mary Magdalene these days?
So much.
So my mom, shout out to my mom, she has recently discovered the gospel of Mary Magdalene. Yeah. It is the most amazing story of how these gospels were saved, because there was many patriarchal powers that tried to destroy them. Yeah. And I mean, this is how many thousands of years, right?
Totally.
And that is such an interesting point, and I'll bring it up on the religion episode, but there are a lot of gospels that were removed.
Yeah.
No, and these are all the ones that bring, like you're saying, bring it together and have that connection where everyone can feel it's all about love, and it's all about, it's just not what you find in the generalized like Bible or gospels that people know of.
No, and very much on like what you were saying about how it's like, the presentation of like a lot of like mystics now is like, I'm the one who can do this. I think there's a book that I read that was like a channeled message from Mary Magdalene, and that's the type of thing where it's like, and the writers of that book said that too, that it's like when you're channeling messages, it's like there is something coming through, and also it's like you as a person. So I don't want to take it as like, you know, this is like a historical thing that I'm saying, but it was a cool idea. And the idea that was coming through was basically that like Jesus wanted everybody to feel like they could do the things that he could do, right? You know, and like everybody could be healers.
He wasn't a deity.
Yeah, he didn't want it to be like, it's me, I'm so special, you know, like he wanted everybody to feel like they could hone their power for healing, you know, and that sort of thing, and hone that kind of like divine, like kind of magical thing. And it almost is something that like it has been gatekept over the years, right, to like prevent people from feeling empowered in that way, you know, and feeling connected to their own like divinity. Like he wanted people to feel like God's on earth. He didn't want to be like, I'm God on earth, you know.
There's a real thank you. That was absolutely amazing. I thank you for saying what you just said, because it is so important, and we say this all the time on this podcast. You have the power.
Yeah.
You are already connected. You don't need, yes, it's great to get a reading. It's great to have a Reiki session. It's great to have an astrology reading. Those are really important things as your curiosity takes you and as you need check-ins, because sometimes I don't feel as connected.
Yeah.
Right? After this, we're going to have a reading, because I was like, I have some stuff I want to work out.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. I can't wait. And I knew when it was time that I needed help. It's just like anything, right? You're at the gym and you need somebody to pull a weight up for you, or, you know, you are carrying too many things through a door and you need someone to open the door for you. Yeah. We're all in this together. But do not feel disempowered when it comes to your spiritual practice.
No, absolutely.
Do not.
That's like I think one of the biggest reasons I teach. And even when I'm doing readings, I feel like I try as much as I can to be like, this is what this card like means traditionally, so that, because I don't want people to feel like they don't have a sense of like agency, you know, over it. I don't want to give, even if I'm giving a future, and even if like it's a future with a card that's like more shadow or whatever, like I don't want people to feel like they have no control over their lives and just like something bad is going to happen to them, you know. I think it's like it is a service, and it's to provide clarity, and I don't want I have left readings in my life, or like those like online readings, or like whatever, like there have been like plenty of readings that I've left feeling like, oh no, you know, like
doom and gloom.
Doom and gloom, and it really is like heavy, and it's like if you're in a space where you're confused, like that's gonna add to it. So I think I really try to be like mindful of being like, no, you can decide what happens in your life. It's not me telling you anything, you know?
Right.
Like, and it's not me telling you anything that you don't like kind of know, you know?
Yeah, that's what I say about all of these, you know, healing practices or methods, whatever you want to call them. It is a reaffirmation.
Yeah.
It's a very rare case that you step into someone that's going to connect with your energy and tell you something that just like, you're like, oh my God, what?
Yeah.
It's very rare.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the bedside manner and the doctor analogy was perfect, because if anyone feels uncomfortable or stressed, or you start to feel it in your body, it's just like anything else. If you go to a doctor and you feel like something is wrong, you can walk away.
Totally.
You have agency. You have your respect for yourself.
You can get another opinion. You can do your own research, you know?
Right.
Like, so I think that's like something I would like, especially as like people are developing their own like spiritual practices, like encourage is to like, I feel like I try to be like fairly like versed on things. So it's like if I get like an astrological reading, like I can know
right
what they're talking about, you know? Like I don't have to feel like, oh my God, like what does that mean? You know?
That's a really good point. And there's so much like, you know, we'll go back to the beginning of the conversation with social media. Yeah, I'll be like the first to admit that I'm kind of like a celebrity tarot TikTok / YouTube,
which is fine. I think like the people are valid. It's just hard when you don't know for yourself.
Exactly.
You know? Like,
and I feel like through that I kind of started to have a better understanding just because I was kind of doing it for like entertainment purposes and fun based on celebrities that I thought were interesting or people that I thought were interesting.
I think I did Who's Gonna Win the Bachelor like on like one of my I
love people. That's a great way to get content and to get people to follow you because people always want to know.
Yeah, I think it's like also like I think you know, spirituality doesn't have to be so like
have fun with it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be so heavy all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely, and trust your intuition.
Yeah,
know what's right for you, and I think if anything, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but as I've progressed on my spiritual path and journey, I find my intuition stronger.
Yeah,
even though I've had help and assistance from all these different people, including books and podcasts and whatnot. The more I learn and the more I understand and the more I connect, the more I can discern.
Yeah. No, it's really a skill. And I think it's one of those skills that's like how performing is a skill or like how, like for me, how like acting is a skill where it's like, it's so hard when the things that you're learning are about like learning a new part of your brain. You know, it's not like, it's not like if you were doing like soccer and you just like kind of did practice and there's kind of an external thing. It's so like hard learning like your internal workings, right? In order, but I think like the more, but it really is like the more you do it, like the more you can do it, you know?
Yeah, it's just like anything else.
Just like anything else, you know? And I think when you know like kind of what intuition feels like for yourself, like I think the more you feel it.
I love that. And our time is almost up.
Oh my gosh. That was a fast.
It goes so fast.
Went so quickly.
It's like wild.
Yeah.
So this has just been such an amazing conversation.
Oh my gosh, it has.
I'm totally having you back.
Yeah, no,
I always do my pitch on camera. So
yeah.
you can't say no.
No, I would love to come back.
It was amazing. I had so much fun. So one of the questions, I have two questions to kind of wrap up today. So how has your relationship with otherworldly, mysticism evolved over the last few years? Obviously, you got into tarot 7 years ago. Yeah. But 3 years ago, you were like, because obviously you have your acting and other things that you do, but you really kind of dove in and decided to do this. So how has your relationship with all of this changed in the last couple of years?
You know what I've been thinking about a lot is that I was, the place that I was working at where I started about 3 years ago, I'm not there anymore. And so I think now it's like I'm entirely freelance. And I think like, with me being entirely freelance, I think something that I've been wanting to focus on more is like kind of my own relationship to it, because I think this is important for like any spiritual worker, is that like you do so much healing and then you do get to moments where you're like, do I feel healed? You know, and it is hard to read when you're like, you're trying to cheer people on. You're trying to be like, yeah, go get your dreams, or like go tell them you like him, or like whatever. And you're like, am I gonna do it?
Right.
Like, no.
Those who can't do teach.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
And so I think like something that like, I think that I have kind of ebbed and flowed over like the last 3 years of like doing it, of like how close to my own spirituality I felt. And I think like the things that are like really important are like having other trusted practitioners, so you can like know when you can have times where you're like, no, I need to be on the receiving end of it. I think like honestly like monetizing helped because it stopped being the type of thing where it's like people would just be like, can you pull a card for me real quick, you know, that sort of thing, because it is an energetic service, right? You know,
it's an exchange.
It is an exchange,
and we live in the world that we live in, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And I think like just also like kind of learning new things about it. Like I feel like that like Mary Magdalene was like a figure who I became interested in like last year, you know? So I think it's like,
I can't wait to share all this stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm excited.
So cool.
So yeah, like having, you know, I think like any like, like your relationship to anything, being like a person or whatever, like having like novelty to it, like adding more novelty to it, I think is always helpful.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, thank you.
You sound so balanced with it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's like it's the type of thing where it's like I've only been freelance for like the last like month. So and before that I just wasn't entirely freelance, but I would like I had it kind of building up. So yeah, it's the type of thing that I'm like, oh, like this is just me now.
And it's amazing astrological energy that you're doing it in. I mean,
I know. It's
awesome.
Intense astrological energy.
Intense.
Yeah.
It is intense. But it makes sense.
But it's not been bad. Yeah, but it's not been bad.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last question is, so what do you want to see in the collective and in the world when it comes to mysticism and the mystical? You know, where do you want this to head?
Oh, that's such a good question. I want it to be ingrained in everything in like a small way. And so I think what I mean like is that I think every industry, it would allow for it to have a lot more humanity if it invited a little bit of like, not again, it's everything so specific to you, but if it just invited like a little bit more of like access to like spirituality, like I think AI is a good example, right? Because so in astrology, spirituality and technology are ruled both by Aquarius. So they're supposed to be friends. They're supposed to go together, right? And then we have like AI, you know, are we going to lose jobs, right? You know, like we have like
who's in control?
Yeah, who's in control of it?
Who's making
like
money from it?
And the AI learns from people, right? So it's like, who are the people that it's learning from, right? And it's supposed to actually, I think, in my head, I have a lot of Aquarius placements, so I think in my head,
love that about you.
It makes sense. So in my head, it's supposed to kind of be there to like kind of aid us and like provide like its own like kind of unique perspective, and it's supposed to be like in service of the more spiritual, you know, and not used to like kind of diminish people's like talents or work or anything.
To continue on the path that we're already on.
Exactly.
It's like time for the shift.
I think like in tarot, creativity and spirituality are ruled by the same thing too. So I think like the entertainment industry is a big area where I'd like to see more of a like kind of like spiritual and holistic.
Well, there's been some interesting news over the last few weeks about celebrity. Celebrity's going to change a lot in the space between.
Yeah, no, so much. I think that it's like, and there has been so much. And I think over the past like year, there's been a lot of like kind of like, you can kind of see the shift of like, I think, and I hope we as a collective want to live a more holistic and like kind of taking care of each other, and we want that from the people at the top too, right? You know,
right? And they're going to go kicking and screaming.
And they're going to go kicking.
Either way, right? Whether they break down or whether they just break out.
Yeah, but
it seems like that's more of what's happening.
Yeah, no, I think so. But I think that's kind of what I want to see, is that I want to see like every industry. I want to see every industry have a little bit of like that mindset.
That's a beautiful answer, because there's a piece in every single thing that is part of this planet, which we all created, by the way.
Yeah.
Maybe not us, right? Yeah. We're still creating, but many, many humans and souls that came before us. And we get to choose. Yeah. And we feel so disempowered. And I think, you know, what the spiritual path can do for people is really empower them. People will tell you that it's disempowering to have someone read cards or that. No, it's empowering. Yeah, right? Absolutely. And connecting back to yourself, like I always said, I mean, this is why we do it. So. Yeah. Thank you so much. So how can people find you? Get a reading from Ana. She's amazing.
Yes, no, please. I'm open for eclipse season. So
yes, great time.
Yeah, so you can find me at tarotwithana.com. And then also my Instagram is at Ana Mirabal Sings.
And it's ANA.
ANA, yeah. And so you can find me there, and you can DM me for a reading, or you can book on the website.
And we'll tag it all below in the show notes.
Yeah, and I'm open for that, and super excited to be doing it this eclipse season. So
I'm so excited for you. I'm excited for your new, I mean, you've been doing this a while, but it feels like another phase.
Yeah, it's a whole new chapter.
And everyone really needs this right now. Yeah. So if you're thinking about it and you're called,
come check it out.
Absolutely. So thank you to everyone who joined us today on The Space Between. Please like, subscribe, share if you like what one of the guests is is doing and, reach out to them, reach out to me, like, comment, all of the things. And we'll see you again soon in the space between.
Thank you so much for joining us in the space between. We hope this conversation sparked connection for you. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who will find value. And make sure to tune into our next episode as we continue the journey into the core themes of our lives. We'll see you again in the space between.